So we're going to shift gears a little bit now, and we're going to hear from our neighbors on Key Biscayne, who we're also grateful for their support of this conference. This is a community that's at the front lines of sea level rise and hurricane exposure, and we're going to hear from Mayor Mike Davey. Is that you?
That's me.
Okay, nice to meet you.
How are you? You too.
And Andrea, Agha, village manager, about what the local government is doing in terms of risk and resilience on Key Biscayne. So,
Correct.
Do we have
Thank
a talk?
Thank you all for coming. I want to thank the University of Miami for putting this on. We are extremely interested in this subject. We live and die by hurricanes. Hopefully we just live. We're a community that follows hurricanes and everything about them from the minute there's a depression coming off Africa until wherever they go, we are following it. It becomes the subject of every conversation. If you walk by somebody on the street, they want an update, whatever it is. So the more technology, the more we know. Background, I grew up on an island, a little barrier island off Long Island. So my family was directly impacted by Sandy. People talk about Andrew. They get the 1,000-yard stare when they talk about that storm. And nobody was on Key Biscayne, really. There were some cottages and a coconut plantation back in 1926 when the Great Hurricane came through. But there are photos of a sailboat sailing across the island during that event. So you can imagine why we are so interested in this subject. Andrea is going to be the person to present for us. I am just the eye candy up here. But you know, we really do appreciate this stuff. We have been, the causeway is our only way in and out. The bridge to our south, Bearcut Bridge, was built in the 1940s. It's too low. We've been talking to the county about that for years. Apparently, I've been told that by engineers that a Cat 2 could lift it up, take it off, and that would put us out. I can tell you that during Katrina, Christina, the previous presenter was talking about Christina, the rainfall was such that I was sitting watching the water rise up on our sliding glass doors. You could see it come up. That's how heavy the rains were coming over Key Biscayne. We don't even get talked about in that storm. Wilma was another one. That was a wind event. We were out of power for weeks. Irma was another one. We were supposed to get the eye. It was really devastating. It was going to take out the Starbucks. That's where the line was going across, so people were upset. We were fortunate enough to be missed by that. At the same time, we had a lot of wind damage. So we really do appreciate, everything everybody's doing on this subject, because for us, it's critical. We need to be more responsive. We need the better job you do, the better job we can do for our folks in terms of, do we have to get them off? Can we let them stay? All those questions that goes along with, resiliency and how fast we can come back. Andrea is going to talk to the subjects, but we do thank you, and I'll let her take over.
Thank you, Mayor Davey. Good morning. My name is Andrea Agha, Village Manager of Key Biscayne. We're going to start with a 1-minute video just to give folks a sense of context of who we are. Thank you. So, the video that we have shows the island of Key Biscayne, which includes Billbag State Park at the end of the island, the village which is in the center, So the developed area in the center is the village of Key Biscayne, and then we have Crandon Park, and then we move over to Virginia Key, which is where we are now. That was the video that we played. So basically what we wanted to talk about was the sense of urgency that we're experiencing. Our residents have real fears. They're facing real risk. They see it every day, and they're looking to us, they're looking to the government to be able to resolve these issues. And we are looking to the community of engineers and scientists to help give us the best data to make the best decisions that we can make. One thing that I've realized since I've been with the village, it's about 1.5 years now, is that typically you see sort of a top-down approach where the governments will take some time to say, okay, we're going to do some planning, we're going to do some studies, we'll do, you know, a stormwater improvement project here, we'll do a water quality project there. What I'm feeling we need, and you can see from the mayor's introduction, what we really are facing now is more of an outside-in approach. We need to face our customers. We need to look the residents in the eyes and be able to say, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're going to keep you safe. We need folks to understand that our purpose now as a government is to keep the island afloat, to keep their property values from reducing, to keep them safe, and to make them feel comfortable and secure that we're taking action. We want folks to know that we seek to understand their problems, which are our problems, and we want to surprise them by solving those problems. So coastal living, yes, it's lovely. It's an island paradise. It's getting more and more expensive to live where we are. Folks cannot afford to get flood insurance as the rates continue to increase. Some insurance companies are not willing to insure some of our properties, which is a very big problem. And as a result, we're having issues with property values decreasing. Back to sort of top-down approach versus bottom-up. So up until 2012, you see some of the things that the village has been doing, some beach nourishment projects. We've been doing some short-term and long-range planning, a lot of planning studies. We've done about 3 or 4 nourishments ranging from about 420,000 cubic yards to a 2,700 cubic yard patch. Part of the reason why we've been having issues are, number one, funding. It is very expensive to be doing these nourishment projects, and as a small municipality, we simply don't have the resources to be able to deliver for our residents. Sometimes our beaches within 1 year can lose up to 5 feet of our beach. If you go right outside, you know, go over Bear Cut Bridge, and you can do the walk, and I encourage you all to do it, to go down Crandon Park, go through the village, and go all the way down to Bill Baggs State Park, and you can see what we're experiencing. So after 2012, 2013, our residents began to get more worried. And folks began to look for their own solutions. So we saw this sort of cycle of grassroots efforts, community groups, the Key Biscayne Community Foundation, who did a great job over the next, from 2013 to the present, of doing town halls, community forums, workshops. The elected body, the village council, appointed appointed boards that would be advisory to the council, made up of resident groups. So there was really this grassroots effort to tell us we need solutions and we need them now. So as a result, you can see the town hall forum in 2016 was done by the Community Foundation. The forum in 2017, a vulnerability assessment, these were all done by community groups and residents. So we're hearing this, we're feeling the pressure, and we need to act. So the landscape we're facing now, in the last 2 years alone, our property values decreased by almost 4%. So roughly $336 million. We only have 13,000 residents on our island. It's about $25,000 worth of value. That's real money. That's real money for our residents, and they're feeling it, and they're worried about that. When you look at some of our major vulnerabilities, there's 4 areas we're going to reflect on. So the beach erosion issues. We're going to talk a little bit about our flooding, our stormwater, and our infrastructure issues. We're going to talk about our utilities, our power, and our telecom infrastructure and what we're trying to do there, as well as the Rickenbacker Causeway, which also impacts us here at the Erasmus campus. So beach erosion, last year we had about 5 feet of erosion that we had. You guys know the reasons, everything that you guys are doing and studying now, this is why this is happening. I can say one thing that's unique, and you can see this in this image here, the shape of the island, right now the way that the the tides and the currents and the winds are coming right into the center here arc of the village, and it's pushing all of the sand to the north and south. So basically, even when we do these nourishment projects, and the last one we did was right before Hurricane Irma, and Irma washed everything away. And we're talking millions and millions of dollars for each one of these nourishments. We're starved for sand. Sand sourcing is a big problem for the village, and we'll get a little bit into that later. And another thing, so the littoral drift, right? So we used to be able to get sand naturally as it kind of went down the coast of Florida, but there have been some necessary, I would say, improvements to some of the inlets, including Government Cut, just north of us, which impacted that flow. So sand that used to come to us naturally no longer does. The way that we're shaped, whatever sand we buy and we're able to get, gets taken away. So we're in a difficult position. So what can we do, right? What can we do? So the first thing, or one thing we've been trying to do is work to become a part of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers 50-year federal shore protection project. And what this would basically do would allow the federal government to step in and help the village to design and maintain solutions that are sustainable for the long run. We had some issues with that. Let me say one thing also. Part of the process for the Army Corps of Engineers, they call it a 3x3x3. So it's a 3-year study, $3 million, and 3 levels of approval, including the Jacksonville office, the regional office, which is out of Atlanta, and then DC. And I commend our elected officials. We've been lobbying those groups. We've been going to DC. We actually were in Tallahassee all day yesterday working on some of these issues with our elected body in Tallahassee. Some of the things from a scientific perspective that this study looks at, they look at the marine communities, the water quality issue, the sedimentation, the dredging operations, how has that impacted us, the sand availability, sourcing of the sand is particularly an issue for us. One of the ways that the Army Corps evaluates whether or not to include us as part of their protection project is they look at the benefit to the cost, and it's a benefit-cost ratio. So as sand becomes more scarce of a resource, acceptable sand from an environmental perspective, it becomes more costly, which throws off the benefit-cost ratio, which makes us ineligible. And if you think about this, these 50-year projects, the project is coming due in 2025. When these guidelines were set 48 years ago, none of the things we're talking about were in the forefront of folks' minds. And so when the federal government is evaluating these projects and these programs, they're using standards that are dated, and that doesn't help us. So some of the things that we've been doing, our first roadblock is we were screened out of the feasibility study because we did not have sufficient parking or public access pursuant to the guidelines established 50 years ago. So what we did was we said, listen, we have public access and we don't need parking. We are a community of pedestrians, of bicyclists. We have Freebie. I'm sure folks know Freebie. It's a free electric golf cart. And when we had Lime Bike at the time. We don't anymore. But these are all different multimodalities that the Key has implemented to be able to address other resilience concerns and sustainability concerns like traffic and transit issues. So we were able to convince the Army Corps that our existing mobility options provided sufficient public access and parking. So we checked that off. Then we came back with a second reason to be screened out. We need $3 million for this study, and we only got $2 million. Sorry, Key Biscayne, you're out of the study again. Okay, so we're not going to allow that to happen. We're a barrier island with over $8 billion of assets in 1.25 square miles. We serve millions of residents that go to Billbags Park and through Crandon Park. That wasn't acceptable to us. And the other thing that we wanted to point out to the Army Corps is that, yes, we're this tiny village here, but as a network, as a system of barrier islands, all of these islands serve to protect the city of Miami, Gables, Pinecrest, Palmetto Bay. So we can't take us in an isolated fact, as an isolated piece of the puzzle. The regulation also is looking at the value of the infrastructure and is not really taking into account the recreational value. And as you know, in Miami-Dade County, Key Biscayne and Virginia Key, these are regional gems. It's not just for village residents. This is something that people from all over the state and beyond come to. Key Biscayne is a global brand. It's recognized everywhere. And if we don't have beaches, if the Rickenbacker Causeway, if we don't have access, the economic impact for us, the vitality of our residents, the value of the assets there are all going to be gone, and we cannot tolerate that. We have had tremendous support from all of our delegation for at least the last 2.5 years. We've had letters sent, we've gone to Congress, everybody is in support, yet we still are not part of the federal protection program. So that's something that we're going to continue working on. With regard to flooding and aging stormwater infrastructure, so in a nutshell, our existing systems basically are underwater. We have catch basins, we have infrastructure out there, and when we have these rain events, when we have these high tide and these king tide events, there's no capacity. It's trying to pour water into a cup that's already full. So 2.87 feet. I mean, there are areas of our village that are very low. When you have, back in 2015, you got, 3.5 elevation, quarter of the island is just underwater. The other thing that happens with the flooding and some of the roadblocks that we're facing and some of the solutions that we're implementing, we're small and we're mostly built out, so there isn't a lot of space left, and again, there isn't a lot of money to acquire land. Notwithstanding the courage of our elected body, they actually acquired 2 residential lots, and we're calling it Resilience Park or some spin-off that, where we're going to actually centralize some of our stormwater infrastructure into the ground beneath these parks. And then we're also focusing on introducing technologies and innovative solutions to filter the water, so we're no longer just trying to keep it off of out of the village. We're trying with backflow preventers and things like this. But when we do discharge into the bay, we need to be responsible. We need the best technologies, the best innovation to be able to put water in at least as good as it came from the sky, if not better. So by acquiring land and treating and using that technology, we're also addressing or trying to do our part in addressing the water quality issues. Some of the solutions also that we're looking at on the private sector, so there's a land development code. These are the regulations that folks need to abide by when they're building, and we're trying to incentivize and encourage different solutions in their building to help us reduce the peak flow. So, vegetative swales, bioswales, porous pavements, rain barrels and cistines. I think these 3 are my favorite. So this idea of green roofs we've heard of, you can have vegetation on your roof that would capture some of the water before it goes into our system, so it'll reduce the amount of peak flow and reduce the capacity necessary on our system. And then there's also blue roofs, which was something relatively new to me, but the idea of actually harvesting through a cistern or through a cistine to be able to harvest the water and just hang on to it and let it percolate through your own system, through your own infrastructure on your property, and maintain that water so that it doesn't get into the groundwater system, so that it doesn't oversaturate and overflow our system too quickly, more so than it can handle. The other thing that we're doing is, again, back to the council's courage and their desire to take action and show our residents, the people who are really, really facing this and are really afraid and are facing the real fiscal impact of these decisions or lack thereof, they've made decisions. They've agreed to double the stormwater utility rate, which is for the average user, not a big ticket amount. It went from $8.90 to $16.20. So it's not a lot of money, but when you add it up, it basically allows the village to pledge an $18 million revenue bond. And so we took our 10-year stormwater master plan, reduced it into a 6-year implementation cycle, and $18 million will fund the first 3 years of that. So we're moving forward on that. And as we're doing that, we said, even the master plan that we did most recently, we updated in 2015, we feel those assumptions are still a little bit dated. I think what we're gonna learn in this symposium is that the models that we have, a lot of the data that we have, the predictions are changing. There are things that we expected to be bad, perhaps are worse. And maybe things are going to go in the other direction as well. We'll learn as we go. But what we're doing in the implementation of this project, each project we're doing is a design-build project, which means the engineering and the science is going to go in as we demuck, as we go into the earth, we see the geotech conditions, we're going to go on a case-by-case basis and determine what the best solution is for each project that we need to address. And we're also looking at multi-dimensional analysis. So the stormwater master plan that we originally had looked at, storm surge. Now we're looking at, let's compound the issues, right? Let's look at max rainfall. Let's look at a king tide event with a hurricane, with a surge, and assume a quarter of our structures have already failed. then what's the solution? And give me not just the 5-year storm, give me the 10-year, the 100-year, and the 500-year planning horizon. And then we can cost out what those solutions look like. Between engineering and science, any solution is possible, but we are trying to challenge the status quo, trying to challenge the norm, and deliver the exceptional service that our customers are demanding of us. We need them to be delighted with our service, not just, okay, we're safe. We want values not just to recover, but to actually continue to increase. Third issue that we're looking at is the undergrounding of our utilities. Right now we have about 2/3 of the island has overhead power and telecommunications infrastructure. We made a tremendous investment working with private sector engineers to come up with a master plan on how we're going to underground, and then Florida legislature basically came up with a storm protection plan that would require the FPL and other utility companies to harden. The challenge that we're having is if we do nothing, our rate base will increase, so our taxpayers are going to pay more on their FPL bill. And the solution we may inherit is the hardening of poles above ground. So wood poles would become bigger wood poles, concrete poles would become bigger, more intrusive concrete poles, and from an aesthetic, from a reliability, from a safety perspective, our residents want underground infrastructure. And that may or may not work for us because of, again, time, money, legislative issues that are going on. So, we did the master plan, we talked about that. I mean, when you're talking scale, we have 13,000 people, and we're looking at a fiscal impact of $46 million, of which about 22% are soft costs, and that's a preliminary estimate, but that's real money. 18 million for 6 years of the stormwater. You're looking at 25 million there. You're looking at 3 to 5 million per beach nourishment, which needs to be done in a cycle of every 3 to 5 years. 13,000 of us, it's more than we can handle on the local level. So we need a guarantee of federal assistance, and it needs to be in the long term. It can't just be a patch job here and there. Finally, the last issue we're going to talk about is the Rickenbacker Causeway, which again is something that we can resonate with the University of Miami, with the Seaquarium, with NOAA. We all face this. We have one way in, one way out. I'm not sure how many of you were here. In the past year alone, we've had 2-3 incidents where the causeway was entirely shut down, not due to natural disasters, due to human activities. And as a result, our residents, 6-7 hours, they couldn't get back to the island. And imagine from an EMS rescue perspective, we have a resident who had a heart attack. Yes, you have air transport, fine, and that's okay, but there are limited resources there too. And so it's scary, it's frightening for our residents, and we need to give them solutions and peace of mind that'll let them know that if you have a heart attack and you're on the island, you're gonna be able to get off. And we've been trying for decades to address this issue. As you can imagine, to redesign and rebuild the Rickenbacker Causeway is gonna be millions and millions of dollars. Again, more than we can afford, and there also is a jurisdictional problem. The causeway itself is owned by Miami-Dade County. Some of the adjacent land on the causeway is City of Miami, and then Key Biscayne comes next, so we don't technically have any say. Notwithstanding, after the most recent event, we worked with the council and with our police department and with the City of Miami and Miami-Dade County to at least look at the Rickenbacker Causeway segment by segment to identify if there's an incident in this segment, this is how we can provide a maintenance of traffic, how we can move vehicles to open up at least one access lane for folks to get in and out of the island. So, in conclusion, the data is clear, and we appreciate deeply all of the work that the scientists are doing, and we're thankful for that. And this is really a call to action. This is our ask of the community to please do what you can to acknowledge that we may not all, the assumptions are, we're talking 100 years out, 500 years out. We understand that the science may not be entirely conclusive, and I get it. I speak data, I understand, but we need to recognize that the human experience is very real and very current. It's happening now, and we need to implement solutions now, and they're bigger than what we can handle as a small municipality. We need some guarantees on the local, on the county, on the state, and the federal level that will really deploy resources and are committed to the solutions, and the science and the work that you all are doing are also contributing to that solution. So we stand by you, we support you, and we thank you. And I also would like to announce that in order to implement a lot of these solutions, we are recruiting for a Chief Resilience and Sustainability Officer. So anybody who's interested, please spread the word. And I will finish by saying, we're in good company. A lot of the work that we've done has been internal. It has also been through the Community Foundation, through our residents, through University of Miami, Miami-Dade County, our Chamber of Commerce, the South Florida Regional Compact a decade ago. They really led the charge in the community. And then #Fillabag is one of my favorites. One of our residents basically on his own set up a bunch of stations along the beach where you can pick up a bag if you want to walk the beach and just pick up trash, plastic straws, bottle caps, and toss it out. So we're thankful for that. So that is it. And if we have time, I can take questions, and I thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. We do have time for a question or two. John? Hold on, there's a mic coming. Oh.
Yeah, thank you for making this presentation. As a former resident of Key Biscayne and a resident of low-lying areas, I'm very sympathetic with what you're dealing with. I have a question. Has the Village of Key Biscayne endorsed the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, which is aimed at putting a price on carbon so we can slow down the emissions, which is, after all, the underlying driver of all of the stuff we're talking about?
We have looked at it. There have been several different resolutions that the Village Council has passed in support of legislation that's happening both on the local, the state, and the county level. I'm not sure
This is national. This is the United States House of Representatives has a bill before it, bipartisan with 75 co-sponsors, to put a rapidly rising price on carbon with a full refund to citizens by direct deposit.
I'm going to give you my card, and I'm going to look it up. I love the idea of it, and anything that we can do to advance our programs, we would be supportive of. So thank you.
This roughly aligns with what the IPCC has asked for to address the climate crisis in a timely way.
Let me let the mayor also speak to this.
Sorry, yeah, we did pass a resolution in support. I believe that was the one. It was...
HR 763?
You're asking. If it's not numbered in my system, it's somebody else's.
Okay.
But yeah, I believe that there was something that was brought to us. It's actually brought by a masked student who went up to Washington and came back. I know there were a number of competing bills up there, and that 763 may be the one that's gotten the most traction. I think Representative Shalala was behind it, or was getting behind it. So yeah, we're definitely. I mean, that absolutely. All of this impacts us, so we want people to understand. I was wondering if there were any climate deniers in here, so I could talk right to them, because I can tell you it's happening. Sure.
Thank you.
Do we have another question? Yeah, here. I'll bring this mic to you.
That was
here you go.
763.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. I found it very interesting when you said that you're looking project by project and assessing the needs of that project, design build being a great solution for it. As you're looking through that, what sort of materials, technologies, and construction systems will you be considering that maybe are not traditional, meaning you're not copying and pasting what was done 50 years ago, especially looking at the Army Corps? They tend to reproduce a lot of that. And do you have anybody on board that would be recommending things that, this is how we're building our future infrastructure today. We're not building it like we used to. So
that's a great question. Great question. So basically what we did was we put out a solicitation for engineering and scientific research, more so on the engineering side for the solutions. It's a continuing services contract where these engineers are going to develop the design criteria package for the design build solicitation. So that engineering firm, once awarded, will basically be with us for the life of our implementation of these improvements. And part of the scoring criteria, we actually put the RFP out. We've received, or RFQ qualifications. I want to say we received maybe a dozen proposals of very qualified firms from across the nation, at least some international firms. And one of the weighting factors, the criteria that we're evaluating, is their use of innovative new technologies and how they would approach giving us the state-of-the-art, the best. We need the best solutions that are the most sustainable, that will make us the most resilient community in the globe, actually. So we plan to bring that before council, I think probably within the next month or two. We're in the evaluation process now. And so hopefully we'll team up with a good engineering firm, and it's a priority that we look at the different technologies and innovative solutions.